All right, fellas, I've got my buddy Jim Sheils with us today. I'm super excited about this conversation for many reasons. And one, I'll just say right off the bat, Jim was at our very first ever Front Row Dads retreat back in 2016. And he brought this concept to the group that to this day has had a profound impact on the men and their families. And we'll get to that in just a second. And also, I really just enjoy Jim. Like, I enjoy my conversations. He's a joyful human. He's wildly intelligent. He's hardworking. He's built an epic business. And the guy has got his priorities straight. And everybody that you talk to that knows Jim just loves him. You know, I went to an event recently I might have spoken about to y'all. It was just called GOT, Gathering of Titans, and it's up at MIT. I heard about it from Jim years ago, and he spoke there. And I went back, I was there as a guest, you know, just this year. And everybody that knew Jim, like this is years after Jim was a guest, still talk about him. He's like a legend in every community that he enters. And so I'm really grateful for the time with Jim and also for you all to meet him. And for those of you who know Jim, just to get a little more time, because there's some cool things we're going to talk about beyond the family board meeting, like how he's living in Costa Rica right now with his family and what's changed over the years, what's evolved in his life. All right. So for those of you who are just meeting Jim for the first time, he and his wife, Jamie, have 5 kids, a family of 7. That's a big crew. They are the founders of 18 Summers, which is a beautiful name, says a lot, by the way, in just a few words. It's a family education company. And Jim is an expert in helping individuals prioritize family and create legendary lives. I'm going to bookmark that comment about legendary lives because we're going to come back to that as well. And he is the author of a book called The Family Board Meeting, a book, by the way, that I read. And I was like, my first reaction was, holy shit, that was short. And I thought, you don't have to write a big book for it to be impactful. And I loved it because it has a simple and yet profoundly impactful concept that we'll unpack here in just a moment. This book was just released in its 3rd edition. We'll talk also about why that was. And ultimately, like I said, our guys, this is a proven track record, the success of this book. I can't tell you how many people have said it matters. In fact, my son, Ocean, who's 8 right now, has a chart on our corkboard in the kitchen where he counts down the days to our family board meeting. So Jim, ultimately here, ladies and gentlemen, and I say that specifically, ladies and gentlemen, even though this is Front Row Dads, about 20% of our audience are female listeners. So what's up, ladies? But, you know, for everybody out there listening, Jim has a wealth of experience guiding top entrepreneurs and thought leaders. And the idea is, how do we create these exceptional lives with different strategies, including passive income strategies, which Jim has got down. Big business. But, you know, the purpose of the show isn't to rave about Jim's business. He's in real estate. He's done really well. He's helped a lot of people, but it's to talk about the impact that he's having at home primarily. But the business is a tool that allows him to do that. So I do want to acknowledge Jim and talk about that, because I'm also not ashamed. I know Jim's not ashamed. We're as a community, we're not ashamed of the work we do, because we help a lot of people and it buys our freedom and our time to be able to pour into our families. Jim's an avid surfer, a traveler. Like I said, he lives in Costa Rica a few months out of the year, and we're going to get into that. But one thing I want you guys to know before we open up this chat with Jim is that you want to know his heart. You want to really know Jim as a guy who not only wants to be a great dad, but like wants to be great to his dad. Jim donated a kidney to his father 12 years ago. And he and his dad had 11 years after that to do life together. And I remember Jim talking about his father, who he lost last year, where he said goodbye to Jim Sr. But I wanted to tell you that because it really does tell you who Jim is as a man. All heart, a lot of love, and super honored to have him here today. So Jim Sheils, welcome to the show, brother.
John, good to see you, buddy.
Let's begin right at the family board meeting. And why don't you tell the guys what it is? Let's just unpack right away the concept of the family board meeting.
Yeah, the family board meeting was a rhythm designed to keep me in line, to make sure that I kept my priorities in priority. And, some of my family story coming into an instant family where all of a sudden, I have a 7 and 5-year-old son that I ended up adopting, was running big businesses. And this was my way to keep them in priority. And what it was making sure that I was scheduling this time every quarter with them to spend a day under a couple of principles. And this one simple strategy, what we saw it do for unfolding my family in the first year or two, and then as I shared it to more families and front row dads, it's really a simple rhythm that once people start to do it, it becomes addictive. It's like, I'm looking forward to the next one. It's not only you, it's Ocean or, your son or daughter. And it's something that could be written on the back of a paper napkin. You joke, God, Jim, that book was short. And I said, yep, all my ADD entrepreneur friends are thanking me for that. But really, as you know, we'll get into it, John, you could really do this on the back of a paper napkin, and I'd be okay with that, as long as people are practicing it. Because again, we wanted to see something where our generation that we're raising now gets it better than you and I had it.
Mm. When was your first board meeting? And did you call it a board meeting back then?
No. And again, to be clear, and you're always so good about it, I don't care what you call it. We called it the family board meeting. It just had a good ring. But what had happened was, John, it was called Gym Days. So here I am, my wife now. We met, fell in love instantly. She was, divorced, full custody of 2 beautiful little boys. We hit it off famously, but they had trust issues from things. My wife, her first marriage was very tough, abusive alcoholic. She stood up for herself, got out, and, here we were. And that first Christmas, John, I said, I'm running 2 businesses. I almost went bankrupt in 2008 from the meltdowns. I said, how do I give these guys priorities? And me and Jamie said, look, we're gonna have gym days. So I made up these coupons and put them under the Christmas tree, because I thought quality time is the best gift we can give, right? And they said, well, what are these? I said, well, these are gym days. You cash them in every quarter. What's a quarter? Okay, every 90 days, you're going to cash one of these in. And here's what it's going to be. It's just going to be me and you one-on-one. My phone is not invited because, as an entrepreneur, my phone was always in the way. And I said, we're going to do something fun that you want to do. You're going to plan the day. I'm going all in. And it's just going to be just us. And they're like, great. And that was the start. It was these coupons called Gym Day. I didn't make this is probably another subject, but I didn't make my adopted sons. They asked me to adopt him about a year later. Of course I said yes, but I didn't make them call me dad until they were ready to call me dad. Because the word dad for some kids, unfortunately, can be a pretty nasty word. And I wanted, when they were ready to call me that word, a good word. And so that was it, John. Christmas coupons under the Christmas tree. And so gym days turned into board meetings, which had a little play on my love of surfing, but also, businesses. What do? We have quarterly board meetings. What are those board meetings for? To reunite the team and look ahead to the next 90 days. I try to do that with each member of my family, John, every quarter.
After you taught this, I know I've shared this with you, and I want to say this to everybody who's listening, that one of our members, one of my best friends, his daughter said to him, I would be okay without Christmas as long as we didn't do away with the family board meeting, throughout the year. And that has stuck with me, man. And I can't tell you how many times a guy will come to me and say, implementing this into my family has been a total game changer. I almost discredited the idea in the beginning because it just seemed so simple. I almost, you know what I mean? I almost like, yeah, it's great. Spend some one-to-one time with a kid, like every now and then, but then what happens is, I think you use the choice word, and I got this word from you and I use it to this day, is rhythms. I love the idea of traditions. Now, rhythm kind of speaks a little more to my heart, but having these rhythms throughout the year, having these consistent, gatherings, and also having them be special, because if you don't look forward to it, if it's not on the calendar, if it's not something that's spaced out, it's actually a lot of times, I think, the distance in between the date that gives it a lot of significance. If you did one every week, it wouldn't be as special as if you did one every quarter. I think there's some genius in the spacing of them. I really have seen that in my own family and witnessed it in other men. Have you seen the same thing?
Yeah, There's something, oh, there's something about 90 days. I mean, a lot of, 90-day breakthroughs, 90-day transformation programs, there is a science to it. A birthday only comes once a year. Yeah, you really appreciate it. But for this relationship building, it was too long. And you do one once a week, which, as you know, at any group I'll go to, all these board meetings sound incredible. I'm going to do one once a week or every 2 weeks. And the overachiever tries to do that. You fail, you give up, and they're not as potent. They're not as special. So there is something about these 90-day increments that keep you in line, and it creates anticipation, looking ahead to the next one, like, Ocean was doing, but it also has enough time for reflection, looking back and saying, gosh, that was so much fun. And it's not like it's yeons away, because for a 5-year-old, a year is like 15 years for old guys like you and I, so, but this keeps the things in space for sure.
And I think you've said this, but you recommend 4 hours, tech free. The child designs the day. And I'm also guessing that you've seen this, and maybe in your own life, it's important to say to dads, at least I think so, and I'm projecting, and I want your opinion, is that it doesn't have to be that every time. Like you can take the model and kind of, work with it so it fits you, right? Because some people are like, I have 7 children, like this, this also, is that really doable if I have 7 kids? And the answer is maybe yes, but also maybe it's not for you. Either way, you have different beliefs, different ideas. What's your take on that?
I think that this is a buffet. Take what you want and leave the rest. I'd be the last person, especially any of my good friends out there listening to this, for me to say follow the rules exactly would be such a wrong statement coming from me. The principles are there to guide you. Yeah. Like, for example, I do have a friend who has 7 kids. When he met me, his youngest was 19. So to be able to, they were out of the house, they were gone. He has 7 children, 1 day a year though. So 7 days out of the year, he flies to wherever, and he spends 1 day a year, one-on-one with them, doing a tech fast, and then something of their choice with time for open dialogue. And that's what it's all about. Sometimes, I know I think we were talking about, you're going on a trip with Tiger. Like, I morph it from 4 hours to when Alden turned 18, the end of his 18th summer. We went to Alaska for 9 days, but my phone was off. It was just him and I, and it was something where he wanted to go. And we had some incredibly deep conversations into manhood on that trip. So the principles are there to support you as guardrails, John. They're not like the old, you're cuffed and stuffed rules of school. Like, no way. These are here to help you, support you, and you can morph them. They're malleable however you want them to be. But they do work. That's the one thing I would say. Like, these are so potent in whatever combination you want to use. Like that one-to-one principle. I can't get, like, when you, Jim, this has helped so many people, and I just can't believe how it's grown. That principle is the hack. That is the cheat. That is the foundation. One-to-one time, John, in a busy family life, busy careers, it rarely happens, whether you have 2 kids or 7 kids. So once you start to build these 3 principles on top of each other, morph it how you want, but use them together, and I think you're going to see results.
Why the 3rd edition? And, maybe speak to, like, what's evolved for you, what's changed, what, and ultimately I'm asking, why did you rewrite the edition? Why do you want to relaunch?
Yeah, it's just, how sometimes we get into an exercise routine, John, and then all of a sudden we kind of fall off, and we're like, why did we give up doing planks? They work so well. Like, and I was fit. The family board meeting, to go wider instead of deeper, we're like, we need to go deeper. There's more case studies. There's more fine tuning on each of these principles that we can share. And really, it was a coming of age. When I released this book, in honor of my 2 adopted sons, they were 6 and 8. Well, guess what? Maggie and Sammy, the next 2 down, and then we haven't even a 1-year-old now, they're 6 and 8. And now they're going into these things, they're seeing them. And for some of the people that have read my book, we wanted to share what's happened with our family. My son, who the famous lighthouse story, if any of the readers out there read the story, he was afraid of heights. And we climbed the lighthouse. Someone just interviewed me on this the other day. Well, that was 11 years ago. His job now, and he's an entrepreneur, he started his own business last year. I couldn't make this up. He has a business called the Gutter Boys. He's on roofs every day cleaning out the roofs. He was a kid afraid of heights. My other son, I talked about, look, I'm a surfer. He was a fisherman. My surfing has to be put aside. I don't love fishing that much, but I love my son that much. Well, he has his own charter fishing business now. So to see these developments, John, to be able to go deeper into the case studies and to fine tune the principles even a little more, and to put an important rhythm in there on marriage, which is we've started to teach my wife and I to other people, just as simple, just as profound, just as consistent. We just felt we had to do this because right now, thanks to people like you, we think we're at about 300,000 families, which is really cool. 300,000 families
Wow.
using, and we want to get it to 2 million. So that was our goal. And, when we look at reasons to do things, I know you and I have had deep talks about, the things you look at with Tatiana and Tiger and Ocean, of why you're doing Front Rows Dads. It doesn't just stop with you, but you want them to be holding the principles to the next generation next. That's what we saw with this family board meeting thing, and saying, how could we only give this to Alden and Leland and not to their younger siblings? So it was just a coming of age, really.
That's awesome. Let's talk a little bit about your relationship right now. How are you guys evolving in your marriage through this process? What does your rhythm look like with Jamie?
Yeah, it's been really good. I mean, never, one thing I'll always say, and our saying is there is no perfect family. If someone comes to me, John, and says, oh, we want the perfect family, I'm like, I don't know what that means. I wouldn't know how to show you how to do that. And I think it's a terrible saying, perfect family. Wow, that puts a lot of pressure on things. And when we say, hey, we're going to bridge our imperfections and make the most of the time we have together, total game changer. And I think that's what Jamie and I have had. And we've really become, obviously there's always been attraction there, but our friendship has grown dramatically over the last several years, which in part our romance has grown even more. And that's something that I hear kind of dissipates. I can honestly say that's actually grown. And one of the key things that's happened for us to do that is, first of all, we work in our family education business together, and only a little bit of the real estate. The real estate's a tough world. I want to protect my girl from that world, to be honest with you. But I love collaborating in the education side. And then we also have the personal side where neither one of those are invited. And one of the most important things that we've put into our life, John, what we've put a spin on it, is this rhythm of date night. And just like before, where you said, oh, come on, Jim, this seemed like pretty simple. I get it, one-on-one time. If we just put a little guardrails around this rhythm, which Jamie and I think have done really well, it's a game changer. Something that was kind of like, right, the tires are half blown up. It gives you full velocity. So if you want me to talk about that, I will, because we've got about a couple thousand people using that so far, and we're like, we've got to put this in the book. It's that important.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let me drill down into the relationship piece here, because this is also cool because what it models for the kids. I love that. How have you developed your friendship? How has that specific piece been strengthened?
We got really clear on our core values. They were the same, and we shared, and we kept learning together. We love adventure. I mean, we got married in Costa Rica, John. So there was when we got COVID, we're like, let's get the hell out of here now. We're all better. We've quarantined. We went down to Costa Rica, where I'd been going for 25 years. And we got an opportunity on the house the last day here in 6 weeks, last day. There was no fighting, John, of like, well, I don't know if I want to do here. We both looked at each other like, what are you thinking? Are you thinking what I'm thinking? So there's some sort of sync up there. I think it's that our values were aligned with, we wanted adventure over things. We wanted to dive deeper into our spirituality, but not be rigid. We wanted to go alternative routes with health and education. We just synced on that, not identical, but we synced on that. And the more we learned on those things, and the more that we actually listened and stepped forward into those things we wanted, the better our relationship got. That, along with clearing toxic people out of your life. John, when it comes to me and my girl, I don't want toxic people around any of it. I think there is, I know we talked about that warrior in us. I will not have toxic people around me, whether it's personal or professional. If I don't want you at my dinner table for a meal and meeting my wife and children, I don't want to be around you. And I used to let a lot of people, especially in the business world, 18 Summers and Family Boarding has already had more pureness. If people didn't like that value, they always stayed away. Real estate, I kept more of an open door policy, John. I almost like, oh, it's the business. I got to do it. I'd rather do less business now. And clearing toxic people out of our life, whether some of it was, more side family or also, business people that just, they were completely different in values. It was hard, but man, that's purified our relationship, if that's made sense.
Yeah. So you guys are doing a weekly date night?
Yeah, so date night, this sounds like something that you're like, okay, Jim, this is going to be too simple again. What do you got? We actually call it date night with a question. And let me tell you the guardrails that we've put around it. Date night fails the same reason that the family board meeting fails. And the reason why it fails is that which we schedule gets done. There's one guy in your group that is worth 9 figures, a healthy 9 figures. You probably know who I'm talking about. And he called me saying, Jim, everyone's using it. The guys are using it. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And I said, so-and-so, you don't even handle your own schedule. Put me on with, and I knew his assistant's name. The assistant got on. I said, I want you to mark it on every quarter right now. We're doing it for the next year. Well, he's been doing it ever since. And the problem with date night is it always gets pushed to the side. The kids have gymnastics or this and that, or I'm taking this late podcast. We're always trying to squeeze in, well, Friday. No, that doesn't work. Tuesday. Well, Tuesday, yeah. Shit, we can't get the babysitter. So what we did is same bad time, same bad channel. Date night has to be same bad time, same bad channel every week. For us, it's hump day. Wednesdays, 5 to 8:30. Wednesdays, 5:30 to 8:30. Wednesdays, 5:30 to 8:30. And instead of us getting on the date with me and Jamie or you and Tatiana, and you get there and you go, how was Ocean's day at school? What errands are we running on Friday? Real mood setters, right? What we started to do, Jamie and I, saying, God, I really want to keep dating her. I want to keep getting to know her. I love this. I want to keep dating. So we started to put together lists of questions, and then we made them into a deck of cards. And then our goal is we go out, John, every Wednesday, 5:30 to 8:30. So we have a babysitter lined up. I'm not doing a podcast, even if it's Front Row Dads or anything else. Something has to be really important to schedule over, which we rarely ever do. And then we go out, same rules with that. Just us. Phone is not invited. I've made that mistake. Don't do that anymore. And then we have 1 or 2 powerful questions. And it's not, what's your favorite color? What did the kids do at school today? What errands are we running this weekend? It's much deeper. And think about it, 1 to 2 powerful questions that you probably don't know about your spouse, asked consistently, week in, week out for a year. Where will you be? How much better will you know your spouse? I mean, Jamie and I have hosted some dinner parties for different entrepreneur groups and businesses. And we've had people that have been married 30, 35, 40 years, and we'll pick 1 or 2 questions, and they'll raise their hand and say, this has been such a breath of fresh air. I had no idea about my wife or my husband or whatever. And this is our whole system for this. So again, back of a napkin, John, but I'm convinced that most marriages, and I go to some pretty, like you, some pretty influential, successful, well-meaning people. And they'll say, yeah, we're kind of feeling separate. And I go, when's the last time you had a date? 7 months ago. I'm going, why? Well, we get busy and the kids have football. And so me and Jamie tried to say, how do we simplify it like the family board meeting? Here's what we do. You're going to set a date every week, same time, same day. You're going to have a deck of cards. We can either send you questions, and you're not going to be that overachiever trying to answer 15 questions like you get a big star check or something. Digest them, 1 or 2 questions. And I can give you some examples, but
give us that.
So one of my favorite questions when we do our dinner night parties is, John, tell me, who was your most influential teacher in your life? Could be from kindergarten to college, and why? And you start to think about that question. So you'd be asking it to Tatiana, or I'd be asking it to Jamie. Well, let me tell you, that one question right there. When I learned about Jamie, came from a single mom family, this 3rd grade teacher, what she did to bring her in, love her, nurture her, support her in a tough time. I wanted to be more like Mrs. K. I'm like, oh my gosh. And for me, she found out about Mr. Malanga, my business organization management teacher. Most teachers wanted my death early, in high school, but not Mr. Malanga. He was an entrepreneur. He loved my spirit. He was one of the big reasons I became an entrepreneur. And when I was able to explain to Jamie what I learned that year, she's like, how can I be more supportive like him? There's tougher questions than that, John. Like, hey, name a time in our life we were going through a difficult time and I didn't show up for you, and how I could have done that better. Now, To take that question, John, you know us, we're always like this. You got to lower the dukes. And then there's more fun ones. Hey, what are the top 5 vacations we've ever taken? And which one would you like to take again first? So you get into the moment. That's just 3 examples, but you can see very different than if you just go in on that surface level and say, well, what do we got going on Saturday? The kids have practice tomorrow. We get stuck in these routine questions instead of getting below the surface.
Yeah. So the part that you expanded upon in the book was that the first book that you put out was mainly dedicated to, the concept of time with our kids. And this book, you're expanding it to include time with your spouse. You took a deeper dive in that path.
In both the case studies of people that have been using the family board meeting and the results that they've gotten by keeping this consistent rhythm with their children. Then we shared some of our family, like, all right, has this really worked? Where are those 2 little kids we read about 10 years ago now? And then most people would say, we want that relationship with our children and our spouse.
Yeah.
We said, what's the one most simple thing? And we get pretty raw into the relationship, because I don't know anyone who has the, all sunshine and rainbows. And really, John, I was screwing things up. I was not there. I was not present, which I know you and I had a great chat on for Jamie. And she didn't feel like there was space to really get to know me, to stay in priority position, to be romantic. And man, what a detriment that is to life. So that's what the book's about. It's not much longer, maybe about 15 pages longer. But we wanted to share more of the stories. And I think that's going to be for some people to get the lesson.
Talk to me about when you're in the one-to-one, and let's say you start to get triggered, because I'm bringing this up because I'm projecting my own belief that I'm nervous, to be honest, about like some regular recurring date nights, because I'm like, this is also a chance for shit to go off the rails, like, so bring some deep questions, brings it like, I'm going to screw this up. And it's going to make, and I really mean that, like, so talk to me about maybe when date night went, it went bad, when you weren't listening, when you didn't respond the right way, when you got defensive, when you didn't drop the your fists, and you were like, your tone was off. Let's say you were exhausted. You brought your work to the date night, whatever it was, it could be all those things, together, that you show up and you're highly sensitive, right? Or you say something that just knocks somebody off center. How do you get back? Right? Have you navigated that? Do you have thoughts on that? Do you have recentering principles of like, yeah.
I absolutely do. And if I've given any impression that I haven't gone off the rails, or I haven't shown I've taken it wrong, absolutely not. I mean, John was just on our podcast and so Jamie got to joke with you on how many times I've messed this up. And John, well, one thing is, not to go back to our other principle in the family board meeting, but intermittent tech fasting is key. One of the most insulting things that we cannot discount is we're trying to have this deep conversation. The person who cares about us the most, or is that emotionally bonded to us, and we take a email or a text thread or look up Facebook, or like, oh my gosh, please make sure first and foremost that thing is completely out of the way. Because that can be, but I just had to take this one thing. I can't tell you how many times that's been, for me in the beginning, and other people I've coached, gone off the rails, because it is very insulting. Yeah. The second thing, John, is, look, I have sensitivity. I have things that, I take the wrong way. And there's 2 things that I have always said to myself now. The first is, and it's funny, I'm thinking of my sons. But I've developed a habit, especially over the last, I'd say 7 years. I apologize fast, and I apologize sincerely. And I've learned a sincere apology, John, can keep a 10-minute issue instead of a 4 or 5 day debacle. And the problem is, with entrepreneurs, we are so we have this diplomatic immunity, like for our wife. Did she just say that to me? Do you know how hard I'm working? I don't need to take this shit. This is what's going on in our head. Like we have some sort of immunity, and we don't. Providing and protecting are not sources of immunity, or that we don't need to listen to this. And what I've learned is the more I've learned to accept that, and if sometimes I'll get sensitive. I didn't like the way that sounded or not appreciated. And I realize I've stepped over the line. I apologize quick and sincerely, and not the apology, well, I'm sorry you didn't like the way that sounded, the very backhanded ones. Those don't work very well. Note to everyone out there. But then the second thing is, John, am I interested or am I committed? Like, I love Jamie. I don't want to be anywhere else. Some people I understand, look, I want to look where, other things, I don't think I'm in the right marriage. If you know my story about how long I waited for Jamie, the fact that I wrote her a letter 9 years before I met her, and then I gave her that and then proposed to her, like, I am right where I want to be. One of the issues I don't have, John, is I want to be right where I am. And so when I know that, and I know that, we're not talking about any big core values broken. There's not, alcohol, drugs, stolen money, philandering, any of that. Like, I can handle this. Like, I'm committed. I'm not interested. So any of this other stuff, then I better get out of my own way. And the more I've been able to try to work on those two things, it's not perfect, John, but it's helped me through some tougher date nights. And look, there's been some date nights where I call it creative tension, because we got through it, but both of us took it the wrong way. Or maybe there's a little bitterness or even a little jealousy or something, a low vibration emotion. But it cracked some things open. And like you said, like Jamie said, the last time you and I talked, like, John, sometimes I don't feel like going on date night, the next week, because there might've been a little rub, but we do it. And man, we are so glad that we did. So just staying that consistent, that consistency is key. For me anyway, but again, for perfection, I wouldn't be the guy to teach you.
What does it look like to live a legendary family life? I know there's a story around this for you, conversation that happened recently. I'm interested in that.
Yeah, for me, the legendary family life is this simple. I want to do all the things I dreamed of as a kid and couldn't do because we didn't have the money, we didn't have the resources. I didn't want to give up on those dreams. Costa Rica might as well have been Mars, John. Might have, it just might have been Mars. So it's all the things I dreamed about doing as a kid and never could do, and I didn't want to give that up. Keep that childlike faith, And the second thing was I wanted to be able to do all the things my dad wanted to do in his lifetime and never got to do. So when I lost my dad on Christmas Day, last year, a year ago, it was profound for me, and he never, thanks to my real estate investing career, which I'm so grateful for, he struggled with money his whole life until I was able to retire, and that last 10 years, he was at our wedding in Costa Rica. I got to go back to Ireland with him to do that. There was nothing left unsaid. John, if my dad had passed away when you and I became friends, there would have been a lot left unsaid. But when he passed, there was an easing of because nothing was left unsaid. And so there were things that, as that foolish high schooler that knows everything, I thought, hey, the old man's whacked. And then you say 10 years later, gosh, I had no idea he got so smart all of a sudden. There's things that I learned about him, his love for Ireland and music and adventure that I really shared. And I thought, wow, Pop ran out of time, but I still have time. So for me, that's the legendary family life. And setting that example for my children. I will never, ever, ever tell my kids what to do with their life. In fact, my older sons have come to me and said, well, Dad, do you think I should do this? Or do you think I should be doing this? And I say, guys, I love you. Don't worry about what I want. What do you want? What do you want? That's where the magic happens. That's where the secret is. That's where the gifts and talents are that I might not see that you can bring up. So I want my kids to, have that where it's not like Dad made me go in the family business or said it was safest to become an accountant. No way. What do you want? And I'll support it. I won't do the push-ups for you. But those are kind of my three elements of a legendary family life.
Paint a picture of Costa Rica for me. I'm asking totally for selfish reasons. I want to go. I've yet to go. Tell me what it's like, man. And did you buy there? Do you just go rent houses for a couple months? How do you plug into the community? What does your day look like? Like, Why Costa Rica of all the places that you could go? Just unpack that. Take me on a journey, man. Sell me on this. I'm excited.
Yeah. So 24 years ago, I got online. I was living in California and I wanted to go to Costa Rica. And I said, Costa Rican surf camps. And I found this little town, Nosara. It's got a really great reputation. It is like a cool vibe village. You would be able to, our good friend who, I think I can say her name on here, Phoebe.
Oh yeah, for sure.
On my four-wheeler, and you said Ben's a front row dad.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, so it's just a really fun, interesting group of people, John. And so my day will start, we bought a house. I'm in real estate. A good friend of mine from Florida opened a brokerage here in 2009. So I had everything laid out from how to buy, the lawyers, the accountants, the property management. And it just made sense for me. I said I could use this part-time, rent it the rest of the time. It does stink a little bit because you got to buy cash down here, but it kept me honest and lowly leveraged. And now friends come and use the house. I give them the friend discount. But when I'm here, John, there is an outpost, a short four-wheeler drive away. So I wake up in the morning with Jamie. There'll be monkeys outside, barking in the trees. I'll get on the four-wheeler with Sammy and Maggie, drive down to the beach, check the surf. Normally get a surf in, then we go to one of the coffee shops where, it's kind of like Norm, everyone knows your name. And, and then I'll go into work for a few hours and work from here and do interviews like this and work on some of my real estate stuff with hummingbirds out the window. It's just like a jungle paradise. There's 5-star restaurants, but dirt roads. Which is a great combo. And it's one of these places where your friends come to visit. You can teach them how to surf. You can take them on a mountain tour on an ATV or a side-by-side. There's all sorts of great yoga classes. So for me, it's everything we wanted to do. Be health conscious, spiritual conscious, outdoors, surfing. There's great fishing for my sons. We go out on fishing trips, landed our first marlin. My best friend came down last week. So again, I'm babbling now, but I get excited about it. But I really feel alive. Times when I'm stiffer at home, John, I don't have that here. My energy levels are through the roof. My children, when I drop the 2 little ones off at adventure camp, and they're going to go rope swinging into the river, and they're going snorkeling, and they're learning how to shoe horses on a Costa Rican farm. That's what it's like.
What's the best season? What are the best months to be there, do you think?
Worst season. So let's start with worst. About mid-August through Halloween, that's rainy season. Don't come. Or if anyone wants to rent my house, it's really cheap. Rates literally drop by 75%.
I'll pay you to make sure there's no leaks.
Exactly. Love November. Really November through April is considered high season. You're getting out of the rainy season, November, December. That's when things are really green. It's still wet, but not raining. It's dry, but still jungle-like here, through April. And then where I'm here, May, June, it rains some, but more like Florida at night or for 40 minutes during the day. So those are great times. May, June, July are great times as well. So really the only time I don't recommend is that rainy season. But you can't really, it's tough to go wrong between, November and May.
So a couple things. One, dude, I surfed for the very first time in Cabo days ago. This is literally the first time I ever stood up on a surfboard.
Where were you in Cabo?
I was in Cabo this last weekend. So I was there 6 days ago as we record this. I was there with the Osbornes and the McCarthys. And
yeah.
Dude, we had an amazing adventure. It was really cool. Tiger got up for the first time, surfed for the first time. That was a little dicey, by the way, I gotta tell you. I mean, right where we were, the rocks, like these gigantic, we're out surfing and there's the guy's like, yeah, don't go there. Don't go, that's really bad. I'm like, I'm terrified. And the other thing that's really funny, dude, I gotta tell you, is, the lesson is so fast. He's like, here's how to jump up on the board. And then he's like, let's go. And next thing you know, I'm paddling out and he turns around and he goes, take this one. And he shoves the board. It's like, It reminds me of like a scuba diving a scuba diving lesson I took in the Bahamas, where they're like, shove this in your mouth now, breathe, or you'll die. You know, there's like that type of scuba diving lesson.
The resort one, yeah, the resort scuba diving class.
Oh
Yeah,
my God. It was definitely not a
one.
professional like certification by any means, but so grateful that I make it out of these things. These are not jokes, by the way, guys. You could really hurt yourself to be true, but to be truthful, this was an incredible surfing experience. So I have to tell you, when I was paddling up on my very first wave, it felt like the wave was really big, but somebody took a picture of me from the shore. It was like, you could barely even see the wave. It was just the best day, man.
That's like, the fishermen, you know how they say the fisherman, oh, the fish was this big.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Waves are even worse for surfers. It's like the wave was 20 foot. Now it's about 4 feet.
Yeah. Yeah. But you feel like Costa Rica is a good place for even beginner surfers to go?
Fantastic place. You want to make sure where you go. Like Nosara, the nice thing is it has what's called an inside break. So smaller waves or really long whitewater where it's great to learn how to attack and turn, or you can go out the back. So if you had friends that were, more advanced, they can go out the back and have a great time. You can be on the inside breaks. It's a sand bottom, which I can't stress that enough when you're learning. I think a sand bottom is 100% the way to go. A reef bottom, I think you are asking for trouble for learning. So that's another reason why I loved it. I love getting people up on their first wave, John, and I've done it for probably hundreds of people, through our retreats, and there is some excitement to that, but you got to have the right equipment and you got to have the right conditions. I can't stress that enough. I think that's in a lot of parts of life, but
sure.
Really Costa Rica or wherever you surf, if you're on too small a board or too rough of conditions, you're almost, why would you do that to yourself? Like, give yourself a shot, get the right size board, a little bigger board, cleaner surf to be pushed into, sand bottom, your goal.
Talk to us about the retreats, man. Are those open to the public? How do you fill those?
Yeah, well, it was, we've had a lot of mutual friends that you just named that have come to our retreat just through real estate masterminds that I was with. And then, we advertised them and did them for about 5 years. We stopped doing them just before the pandemic, almost brought them out in the pandemic, but obviously that wasn't a good timing. And I started those, John, for those two young boys, when Alden and Leland were 6 and 8. I said, I want to get them around good families and learn lessons that are important and do it in a fun way. And they've come back to me and said, those 5 years of retreats were something huge. And now with Maggie and Sammy hitting that age, we're going to start them up again. They're open to entrepreneur families. Look, if you're all about, strengthening the family and learning the important lessons not taught in school in a fun way, personal development, financial intelligence, relationship skills, service and contribution, and not in a traditional classroom in a fun environment. That's what our retreats were about. And it's, we love working. It is a selfish thing. My kids get to be around all these cool families, and it's nice to see, the kids create their own friendships in different areas of the world and different people. So I'm trying to kind of do, John, what like you and so many other good people do with real, brotherhoods. That's what we do, bringing whole families together, give the children a real focus to do it, and more standing side by side with them to help make it happen.
When is the next one?
We're actually right now looking at scoping the beginning of November, because we'll be back down here. And like, I know you've done so well at your life. I always applaud you how, when you and I met, you're like, Jim, I'm getting great speaking fees. I'm on the road. I want to stay home. And now you're doing it. You're bringing people to all, which is fantastic. Sometimes another place, but they're coming to you. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're like, well, when will we be in Costa Rica? That's when we'll set our 2-3 retreats a year. So we're looking at probably beginning of November.
I love it, man. I would love to be in the know about that. I'd love to be able to share that with Front Row Dads. I think that we'd have a lot of interest from our community to be there. I mean, I think as of this morning, we're probably like 335 guys. And I think all of them are candidates for your event.
Yeah, let's just stop and talk about it. Pat on the back. You and I are in Westchester, Pennsylvania. You come up, you're like, hey, are you Jim Sheils? I said, yeah, John Broman. Like, oh yeah, mutual friend. And you're saying, I got this idea and it's coming up in 2 months, and so I'm gonna give you props, my man. You stuck to your values. You're doing really good with the people you work with, you care, and you've expanded it to a level that's having real impact. So I'm really proud of you. I just want to make sure I tell you that.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I love that our friendship has continued to grow and that we find ways to circle back. And it always feels like no matter how much time might pass between the call, we just hop on the phone and we're right back in it. And that's, I love that part of when you just know, when you know that this person's going to be a lifelong friend, it just, yeah, it's easy. There's a lot of ease to that. So brother, thank you for making time today. Thank you for continuing to share the family board meeting. Thanks for showing up for your family and being a model for us. Thanks for being humble in all of your success. Thanks for bringing back these family retreats. I think that sounds really exciting and I genuinely want to know about it. And I really believe in my heart, dude, that we're going to be hanging in Costa Rica at some point. I just know it. I know it's happening.
That's an easy happening right there.
Yeah.
Very easy.
I love it, man. Wonderful, brother. Is there anything you want to say? And please include in this anything, any final words, please include where you want people to go to check out the book, or if somebody's interested in collaborating with you somehow, bringing you in to speak somewhere, attending one of your events, just any of those things that you can speak to. If people are like, yes to this, and yes, I want more.
Yeah, I mean, 18summers.com has a lot of our information. You can get the book there on Amazon. You can learn a little bit more about the book, the talks that I do. Happy to support and collaborate in the family realm like John and I have done before. And our retreats, as we start them up again, it's probably been pretty exciting that we were actually more known for more than the book for a while. It's something just to keep in mind if you want that family element to go deeper. Something we're pretty good at. So, and final thing I would say is, I think you set a great example, John, and I hope I do as well. For any guys feeling the pressure out there or women, there is no perfect family. As long as you start to get that out of your head, that pressure of perfection on you, your spouse, your children is awful. Take that off. The more that I've done that and said, I'm going to do my best, I'm going to make the most of the time we have, bridge our imperfections instead of try to be perfect, life just gets easier. It gets better. It gets more enjoyable. It gets more connected. So, don't put yourself under that pressure. And I got to continually remind myself that. So maybe that's why I'm saying it out loud to you and everybody else.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. Guys, I'd love to buy a few of you a copy of this book. So here's my deal. If you do one of two things, you have two options here, right? One is if you've already read the book and you want a copy of the new one, then all I want you to do is write a review or share your thoughts with Jim, some type of testimonial about Jim's book if you've already read it, and then send an email to my team letting us know that you did that, help@frontrowdads.com. That's our podcast team. And just tell us your address, where you live, and we will mail you a copy of Jim's book as a thank you for loving on Jim and supporting Jim as a way of him being here today. Another way you can get it is if you love the show, if you're new to the Front Row Dad podcast, if you've never written a review on the show, write a review of the Front Row Dads podcast, screenshot it, send it to us. We'd love to read those and know that it came from you, and include your address again. And for the first 5 people that do these, we will send out copies of the book to anybody that wants one. So Jim, thank you, brother, for being here. Again, we love you, man. Appreciate you. So grateful to have you in our life. The family board meeting, as I've said to you many, many times, has had a profound impact. I know it will continue to serve, and it will have a beautiful ripple in our community. So thank you for being here, brother.
Thanks for having me, bud. I appreciate it.